Part 16. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bh Yaoye 11U. Chapter 153. 2 more days passed. On this day, Sokingyu was in the house and heard Mrs. Miao telling Fool in the courtyard that she was going to the mountains to collect herbs and asked him to stay at home and look after the house. Sokingyu listened with her ears perked up, and became energetic when she heard that Mrs. Miao had gone out. If Mrs. Miao didn't have evil intentions, just listening to what she said to Shatter, Sokingneo would have been moved by Shatter's motherly and affectionate attitude. She was just thinking about how Mrs. Miao had been monitoring her these days, asking her questions if there was nothing wrong, and knocking on her leg bones to judge her injuries. Sokingyu couldn't be moved. And the way she looked at Xiaobao, as if he was something superfluous. Those gloomy and cool eyes were staring at Xiaobao's rice bowl, as if Xiaobao had eaten too many good things from her. Sokingyu felt like she had a lump in her throat, and she didn't dare to stay any longer. Seeing that her legs were not improving these days, Mrs. Miao became suspicious of her medication. Not only did he knock on her leg bones every day to check her injuries, but he also went out to collect medicine every day. I wonder if he was anxious to get her cured so that he could arrange for Fool to sleep with her. The way Mrs. Miao and Shatter stared at her made Sokingyu feel as cold as bones, as if there was a snake coiled around her body, which made people shudder. At this time, Sokingyu heard her footsteps walking away and quickly rolled off the bed. I just took 2 steps towards the door of the room, thought for a moment, turned back and picked up the walking stick placed beside the bed, and put it under my arm. Out of the house. At the door of the room, Fool was sitting cross-legged on the ground, playing something unknown in his hands. When he saw her coming out, he stood up. "Hey, madam, madam." The saliva dripped down and dripped onto his front, making it wet. There was a piece of cloth that Madame Miao had tied for him, but it didn't seem to be of any use. After only a while, it became soaked. Mrs. Miao was not here, so there was no one to change her. Sokingyu glanced at him and passed by him with a stick. The fool got orders not to let her leave the house. When he saw this, he became anxious and chased after her. "Madam, madam." He used his hand to pull her. Sokingyu shifted her body and dodged away. Fool caught the opportunity and stared blankly at his hands. Seeing that Sokingyu was almost at the entrance of the courtyard, he rushed over with a few big steps and grabbed Sokingyu. Sokingyu became anxious and immediately raised the cane and swung it towards him. Unexpectedly, the fool was very strong. He grabbed the walking stick in just one breath, snatched it away, held it in his hand, looked at it blankly, and then threw it to the ground. Then he grabbed Sokingyu's wrist with his hand. The strength was surprisingly strong, and Sokingyu felt that her wrist was about to be pinched. Sokingyu whimpered in pain while slapping him, even using her feet, without touching him at all. Extremely anxious. "Madam, madam, don't go out, don't go out." "I won't go out, please let me go." The two of them were pulling at each other, and seeing that ciliary saliva was about to drip onto Sokingyu's body, she felt a chill. He immediately called up the system, took out the electric prod, and waved it hard. Silly fell to the ground with a thud and twitched twice. Sokingyu was extremely lucky that there was such a thing as a system. She once thought it was useless. At this moment, Sokingyu was standing on the ground, gasping for air. Seeing Silly lying on the ground soundlessly, she felt a little scared. I hurriedly squatted down to check his breathing, and found that he was still breathing, and breathed a sigh of relief. Picking up the walking stick, he immediately rushed out of the courtyard. When I got outside the yard, I held the crutch again, using one leg to hold on and the other to support it. She walked slowly on the village road. When the people in the village saw her, they all cast curious glances at her. Sokingyu smiled and nodded at them. Some villagers greeted her, but some didn't. Some people only looked at her from a distance and then avoided her. He whispered behind her, I wonder how long this can stay. As long as she hides her son well, she will definitely be able to keep him. No mother can bear to have her own child. It's so pitiful. I don't know how distressed the child's father will be if he finds out. Do you think her family will look for her? Why not? Didn't you see that her son is so good looking and smart? What family wouldn't want such a son or grandson? Mother Meow is really evil. Why did she bring back a woman with a young family this time? I'm afraid her idiot won't be able to give birth. Doing evil. So King Nao couldn't hear the villagers talking behind their backs, and even if she heard them, she wouldn't care. She won't stay here. She also wants to go out to find her relatives. So King Nao walked slowly along the foot of the mountain. Find the entrance to the cave that Xiaoshan Ziogu mentioned. She hoped in her heart that the people in the village would be kind and not reveal her whereabouts today to Mrs. Meow. But she didn't dare to gamble on people's hearts, so she pretended to come out for some fresh air, walking, resting, and watching, as if she was really taking a leisurely stroll, making outsiders look like she had really been recovering from a long illness and came out for some fresh air. The old village chief saw it from a distance and sighed. After all, it can't resist the conscience in my heart. He has seen too many young lives ruined by Mrs. Meow over the years. It was enough. He turned a blind eye to her and was worthy of her dead old man. The old village chief walked towards Sukingyu. The scenery in the mountains is not bad, isn't it? Sukingyu was startled, turned around and saw him, and smiled, yeah, it's pretty good. There's chaos outside, but the mountains and clear waters here are beautiful, like a paradise. The old village chief was very relieved. Finally, he was not the only one who felt that this place was a paradise. Sighing, it's a pity that many people don't know how to cherish it. They all think that the outside is rosy and the willows are green, the houses are beautiful, the city walls are thick, and the food in the pubs and restaurants is more delicious. Many young men in our village don't want to come back as soon as they go out. I am the same. He left behind his wife, children, old parents, and never came back. He doesn't know whether he is alive or dead. Seeing that he was in a low mood, Sukingyu comforted him, I have been traveling for a few months and have seen many people leaving their homes and many forces arresting young men. Maybe Xiaoshan Ziogu's father was just arrested, not him. Don't want to come back. The old village chief knew her good intentions and didn't say anything. He just shook his head. Let me show you around. You haven't had a good look at our village yet. Let me tell you, our village is really a good place to hide from the world. There is food in the mountains, streams in the valleys, and the soil is fertile. We don't lack anything except salt. Seeing that Sukingyu was really interested, she smiled knowingly. Then he said, look there, if you look at it this way, can't you see that there is a hole there? Except for us villagers, outsiders can't find it. We only go out from there when we are short of salt, buy some salt and some sweets for the children who have never been out of the valley. You see, we can climb out of the mountain in just one day. The entrance to the cave is also well covered, so outsiders cannot find it even if they want to come in. King Nao stared at the direction of the old village chief's finger with long eyes, feeling as if grass had been planted in her heart, and she was in a state of confusion. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Ba Jiaoye 11U. Chapter 154. In the afternoon, King Nao was worried when she heard Mrs. Meow coming back in the room. 6 Reading. Fortunately, after Siller was knocked unconscious by the electric baton, he only lay down for less than an hour before getting up on his own. At this time, King Nao breathed a sigh of relief as she listened to Mrs. Meow's concerned questions about Shatter in the yard. After a while, Mrs. Meow came in to see her again and knocked her leg bones as usual. Mother-in-law, do you think I won't get better? Will I become lame? My legs have no strength at all. I'm standing on the ground, limp and without any strength. Is it useless? Sukingyu felt so wet that she could no longer control her tears because she was about to become a cripple in the next second. Mrs. Meow gave her a cold look and knocked twice, but found nothing. I'll change your medicine for you tonight. Who told you to go downstairs? You're not well yet, why are you so anxious to go downstairs? Don't waste my medicine. Okay, I listen to my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, you are such a good person. Mrs. Meow didn't say anything, turned around and went out. Sukingyu felt relieved. Next, she had to plan carefully so that Mrs. Meow would not get the clues. She was going to hit it right off the bat. Otherwise, if Mrs. Meow catches her, she will end badly. When Mrs. Meow hides the little treasure, she really has no choice but to obey her orders. In the next few days, Sukingyu was silently preparing to leave. I don't know if I heard some rumors. I heard that Sukingyu went out to walk around the village, and Mrs. Meow even scolded her. One night, she even said that she would take Xiaobao over to sleep with her. Sukingyu was scared to death. Xiaobao also howled so loudly that it made Mrs. Meow's ears hurt, and then she let him go with great disgust. Xiaobao returned to his mother's arms, clutching the clothes on her chest tightly, inhaling her mother's breath without moving. He was even shaking with fear. This made Sukingyu feel very distressed. Xiaobao has always been a lively and courageous child. This time he was trembling in her arms, which showed that he was really frightened by Mrs. Meow. Neither mother nor son dared to sleep at night. Xiaobao slept and woke up for a while, but Sukingyu simply didn't dare to sleep. From that day on, Silier no longer stood guard outside the door. He would also break into the room during the day and pull her, "Madam, madam, play, play," and then pull her to bed. Sukingyu was frightened and she couldn't stay any longer. Sukingyu prepared for another 2 days. This night, Sukingyu didn't dare to close her eyes until midnight. She listened to the commotion in the courtyard and around her, and confirmed that Mrs. Meow and her silly boy were indeed asleep. She quickly put Xiaobao on her back in a sling, grabbed the crutch in her hand, and moved lightly. The ground opened the door. Before going out, he thought for a moment, took out 2 taels of gold, put it on the bed, and tiptoed out of the yard. Fortunately, the courtyard gate made of fence made no sound. Mrs. Meow may have felt that her legs and feet were not fully recovered yet, so she did not take any precautions against her. It may also be that no woman had been able to escape in the past, so she relaxed her vigilance. Sukingyu walked out of Mrs. Meow's yard so easily. She didn't dare to look back and ran all the way to the cave entrance out of the mountain. Xiaobao woke up and called out in a daze, "Mom!" Sukingyu slowed down her steps and bumped him up, "Xiaobao, sleep well, mother is here." When Lu Xiaobao heard that his mother was there, he immediately fell asleep again. As long as my mother is here, it doesn't matter whether he is in bed or anywhere. Sukingyu listened to her son's even breathing, feeling extremely comforted and grateful. This is a sensible child. He followed her all the way without crying or making trouble, which saved her countless worries. Xiaobao's body is still strong and her foundation is well kept. She has been fleeing with the adults all the way and has not suffered any fatal illnesses, which has saved her countless worries. There was some weak moonlight tonight, so Sukingyu didn't dare to use a flashlight, so she used the moonlight to find the entrance to the cave. Sweeping through the branches and leaves covered by the sky, Sukingyu plunged in. The cave was very deep. Whether it was the cool night or the low temperature in the cave itself, Sukingyu felt that the cave was refreshingly cold. She turned on the flashlight and groped her way to the other side of the cave. From time to time, a rustling sound was heard in the cave, which made Sukingyu's hair stand on end. From time to time, a few resting bats flew overhead, playfully passing over her head and in front of her eyes, causing Sukingyu to scream in surprise. She carried her heart all the way and finally came out of the cave. The air suddenly became much fresher. Although it was still dark outside, Sukingyu just felt happy. She wanted to shout with excitement. Sukingyu stood at the entrance of the cave for a moment, blinked away tears, and looked into the darkness. She couldn't tell the direction, so she only followed the path pointed by sister-in-law Shi and the old village chief, climbing up the ridge. After climbing a section of the ridge and walking countless mountain roads, I finally saw in the morning light an abandoned tea house that the old village chief had mentioned. Sukingyu's legs went weak and she collapsed on the ground, almost crying. "Mother! Why?" Sukingyu untied Xiaobao and hugged her tightly to her chest, feeling lucky to have survived the disaster. "Go to sleep, dear baby, it's still early." She patted the baby in her arms gently, seeing his peaceful and obedient sleeping face, she felt full of strength in her heart. Sukingnao didn't dare to rest too much. It was dawn, and she was afraid that Mrs. Meow would catch up with her. "Carry the baby on your chest in a sling, keeping him close to your chest." She felt relieved when Xiaobao was under her eyes. Sukingnao knew that to the right of the tea house was the town where people in the valley went out of the village to buy salt, so she walked resolutely in the opposite direction. I didn't dare to walk on the main roads, but took the narrow paths and walked into the forest to avoid people. It wasn't until she was exhausted that she sat down and untied Xiaobao. The mother and son exchanged some food from the system to eat. In order to reward Xiaobao, I gave Xiaobao a piece of cake to eat. Xiaobao was beaming after eating, with white cream on his mouth. He smiled broadly at her and said, "Mom, eat." "Well, is it delicious?" "If it's delicious, Mom will change it for you next time." Food that was commonplace in the past is precious here. Sukingyu touched her son's soft hair and felt infinite emotion in her heart. When Sukingyu finally took Xiaobao to the gate of Renzhou City, her eyes were warm and she just wanted to shed tears. She looked at the city gate for a long time, touching it again and again, thinking silently in her heart, "Mom and Dad, sister, Qingyang Qingxing, sister is here to find you." She was about to see her relatives, and the heart in her chest almost jumped out of her chest. Sukingyu passed through the city gate, walked in, and looked all the way to the street where the cloth shop was. "We're almost there, just turn another corner and we'll be there. Xiaobao, we are about to find your grandparents. Are you happy?" "Heart." "Well, Xiaobao is happy too." Sukingyu was enjoying herself when she felt a sack or something fall from the sky and put a hood over her head. Before she fainted, she heard Xiaobao crying, "Mom." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 155. In the hinterland of the Central Plains, Lu Bachan had not slept well for several days. Read. I don't know why, but the war has been very beneficial to them these days. Wang Hu is surrounded by them and is almost running out of food. As long as he surrounds him for a few more days and narrows the area, Chang'an will be able to defeat himself without any attack. In the past few days, everyone in the army, from top to bottom, was waiting for Wang Hu to destroy himself. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But for some reason, these days, he dreams every night, and the woman he abandoned in Fengting town always appears in his dreams. In the dream, the lady always faced him with an accusatory look on her face. In the dream, she seemed to be in pain and suffering. He seemed to hear her say that she was so scared and she was waiting for him to save her. For several nights, Lu Bachan woke up from his dreams. After waking up, thinking about the unexpected events that might happen to Sukingyu, my heart felt like grass growing. thinking confusedly about her situation. The Central Plains is in such chaos now. I don't know if my family is okay or not, and I don't know if she is okay. He wants to take Chang'an back as soon as possible. When he gets Chang'an back, he will ask Xiangfeng for a long leave. He will go back to his hometown to see her. Lu Baqin turned his longing for his wife into full fighting power. The two armies of Kui Sheng and Mukong surrounded and suppressed the Qi army for several months, and finally victory was in sight. Lu Baqin led the soldiers and horses gathered in Zupan town to assemble in the capital. Mukong led Hedong prefecture and Tuochuo clan warriors to attack Chang'an from the north. Wang Hu personally led his army to fight at Weiqiao. The official army of Shuo dynasty and the Qi army fought 3 times a day, and the fighting was extremely fierce. Lu Baqin, Kui Sheng, and Mukong all made declarations of life and death in front of Emperor Shuo, vowing not to return Chang'an until they took it. Under the influence of the general, all the soldiers below were also in full combat strength. Success frequently. The Qi army led by Wang Hu lost consecutive battles. Many other vassal towns that were swaying in the wind saw that Wang Hu was defeated, and they also took the opportunity to attack Wang Hu. The Qi army was defeated. Wang Hu was unable to win the battle and evacuated Chang'an overnight. At this time, he still had 150,000 soldiers and horses in his hands. While he evacuated, he ordered Wu Yan to lead an army of 50,000 to continue facing the enemy. Unexpectedly, Wu Yan was also beaten by Shuo's army and retreated repeatedly. So he asked for help from Wang Hu, who fled to Kaizhu. Wang Hu sent Meng Kai to support him. Unexpectedly, Meng Kai had a dispute with Wu Yan and delayed the dispatch of troops. As for Wu Yan, they waited and waited, but no reinforcements from Meng Kai arrived. Seeing that his remaining troops were about to be annihilated by Shuo's army, Wu Yan bit his back molars, turned around, and led the remaining tribe to surrender to Emperor Shuo. Kui Sheng and Mukong both told Emperor Shuo that this person was not available. However, Emperor Shuo had been dazzled by the successive great victories. He may also have wanted to set an example to other Qi army generals and many vassal towns that were still wavering. He not only gave Wu Yan the Chinese name Quanzhong, but also granted him the title. He recruited deputy envoys for the Henan Bank of China camp. Later, when he saw that he had won 2 more battles, he was so happy that he made him the military envoy of Suanwu army and gave him the whole of Henan. Wu Quanzhong won Henan and his power expanded rapidly. With the surrender of the soldiers from the Qi army, they gradually became as powerful as Mukong, the military governor of Hedong, and Kui Sheng, the military governor of Fengxiang prefecture. Under attack from 3 armies, Wang Hu withdrew from Chang'an and fled to Quanzhou with his general Meng Kai and the rest of his troops. When retreating, the Qi army abandoned their valuables on both sides of the road to delay Shuo's pursuit. Most of Shuo's army officers and soldiers are just ordinary people. Who doesn't want or be jealous when he sees the treasures abandoned on the roadside? So along the way, all the soldiers scrambled to pick up the property first, and they made a mess of picking up. The Qi army led by Wang Hu stopped pursuing him, and Wang Hu was finally able to reorganize his army and leave. As for Emperor Shuo, he probably didn't like Wang Hu and the tens of thousands of people he had left. As soon as he heard that Wang Hu had withdrawn from Chang'an, he immediately ordered the camp to break out. I am anxious to return to the capital Chang'an with my concubines and close ministers. After entering the palace, he sat on the throne again, and with a wave of his hand, he conferred honors on the meritorious ministers, held a banquet for the guests, and drank wine with everyone. Lu Baqin was also promoted to the 4th rank of Zongwu general. Wu Quanzhong has received various honors. This person is also a bit bloated. After receiving the reward, he held a banquet at home for guests, including Kui Sheng and Mukong. Kui Sheng and Mukong also happily agreed. There's good wine and good food, so you can eat for free, don't you? Suidu personally led his men to the Wu family for a banquet. During the dinner, I don't know whether he was drunk or something, but Mukong also started to float. During the banquet, they actually danced and shouted that Wu Quanzhong was a rebellious minister and a traitor. He was a mere general and was not worthy of being on an equal footing with him. It was too late for his men to pull him away. Wu Quanzhong's blood welled up in his heart. His own status as a reduced general was somewhat embarrassing, so he wanted to use this opportunity to hold a banquet and have a brotherly relationship with his colleagues. Unexpectedly, this second fool Mukong pretended to be crazy under the influence of wine and called him a traitor and traitor. Can Wu Quanzhong endure this? There were so many girls looking at him during the banquet. Is his face meant to be stepped on? This anger was suppressed until Mukong led his troops back to Hedong Mansion. One night, Mukong led his troops to stay overnight in an inn. In the middle of the night, while he was sleeping soundly with his concubine in his arms, Wu Quanzhong sent someone quietly to the inn to set a fire, hoping to burn him to death there. Unexpectedly, Mukong was so unlucky that as soon as the fire started, heavy rain poured down, extinguishing the fire that Wu Quanzhong had just started. Let him escape. And this rainy night arson case also burned out the feud between the Mu family. It also caused Kui Sheng and Lu Bachan to have a lot of troubles. Emperor Shuo returned to the court and slept for a few days with his concubines in his arms in the palace decorated with dragons and phoenixes, and then began to settle matters. Those who had previously defected to the Qi army were granted the title of observer and strategist by the Emperor of Qi. Those who were used in such important ways naturally started to lead the team. Start hiding in the deep mountains and old forests. I'm afraid that if I accidentally get settled by Emperor Shuo, I'm afraid I'll be peeled off and cramped after being caught by Emperor Shuo. A wild team also fled in panic with the Qi army. When passing through Renzhou, I found that Renzhou was unexpectedly more prosperous than some state capitals. So he stayed in Renzhou to replenish his energy for a few days. Later, he was discovered and reported, and was expelled by the Renzhou governor appointed by Jiangxi observation envoy Yang Bixin, so he continued to flee with his team. Whatever valuables or good-looking women were on the road were also taken away, and there were many bachelors in the team. Su Qingyu was unlucky enough to be sacked by them. When she woke up, she was still dizzy and nauseated. She even suspected that she had a brain oscillation. When he calmed down, he rushed to find Xiaobao. She found that Xiaobao was sleeping soundly next to her, and she breathed a long sigh of relief. It's good that my son is here. As long as you are here, Mom is not afraid of anything. Su Qingyu took off the safety leashes from her and Xiaobao's hands. Extremely grateful for it. If it weren't for this invisible traction rope, Xiaobao might have been thrown away halfway. Su Qingyu looked around and saw that she and Xiaobao were being locked up in a wooden house. There were some messy firewood piled in the house. I wonder if it was a woodshed. The door was closed, and there was only a small window through which a few rays of sunlight filtered in. Su Qingyu got up and walked to the window, holding onto the window lattice and looking out. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhao 11U. Chapter 156. The window was very small and the field of view was limited. Su Qingyu could only see the small area in front of her. Read. There are earthen houses nearby, mountains in the distance, and mountains full of green in the field of vision. She won't be caught in the valley again, right? Mrs. Miao will not let her go. Su Qingyu's heart clenched suddenly. When she left, she deliberately left 2 taels of gold. One was to thank Mrs. Miao for saving her, and the other was to give Mrs. Miao a warning. She can get gold, and she is not an ordinary citizen. She has no one at home. Even if you want to catch her, you have to be careful. These days, most people's settlements are in copper coins, and those who have a little money can only use silver. Some people may never see silver in their lives, let alone gold. So what she kept was gold. Su Qing's guess was good. After Mrs. Meow found out that she had run away, she really wanted to catch her in the valley. But he was stopped by the old village chief. Pointing to the two tails of gold, he warned Mrs. Meow not to act rashly. Don't bring devastating disaster to the village when the time comes. Then she is the eternal sinner of the village, and no one in the village will forgive her. After she dies, drive her fool out of the valley, and his son will only live for a few days. Only then did Mrs. Meow suppress the unwillingness in her heart. Let Sukingyu escape. Otherwise, given Mrs. Meow's familiarity with the mountain roads, it is not certain whether Sukingyu would be able to escape. Sukingyu looked at the mountain scenery in front of her, worried that Mrs. Meow had caught her and imprisoned her in the mountains. Do you want her to fend for herself and deprive her of food? Sukingyu looked at the window for a long time, but couldn't see anything. Seeing that Xiaobao woke up, he hurriedly turned around, picked him up, and fed him some water. If an ordinary person encountered these conditions and deprived himself of water and food, he would have died long ago. Lu Bachan, you have to thank me for leaving a queen for you. While Sukingyu was thinking about it, she felt very happy when she saw Xiaobao leaning against her softly, obedient and well-behaved. It's nice to have a little thing with her. Unable to get out for a while, Sukingyu didn't dare to act rashly in broad daylight. Play quietly with Xiaobao in the house. At noon, two men finally opened the firewood door. Hey, you're in good spirits. I thought you were still going to sleep. You've been sleeping for 3 days. Another man said, Brother Lang, it seems that this medicine is very effective. Next time I go out, I will ask the boss to give me a few packets. Where are you dreaming about your big head? How many more packets are there? You can't even get a packet. You have to use the knife on its edge, do you understand? You think this medicine is like the fallen leaves outside, you can just pick it up on the ground. Don't spend a lot of money. How much does it cost? The man who called Brother Wolf rolled his eyes and scolded him. Xiaobao held Sukingyu tightly, but the child turned to look at them with interest. Hey, this kid is so brave. He dares to look at us like this. Yo, Brother Wolf, look, this kid is still staring at us. As the man spoke, he stretched out a finger towards Xiaobao, trying to hook his chin. Sukingyu hurriedly took Xiaobao and took 2 steps back, but there was a wall behind her, and she was pressed against the wall. She was preventing that person from touching Xiaobao, but unexpectedly, the man named Brother Lang quickly snatched Xiaobao from her arms, put his arms under Xiaobao's arms from behind, and lifted Xiaobao up. Give the child back to me, Sukingyu rushed over to grab it. The wolf brother got on the wrong side and kicked towards him regardless of Xiaobao's screams. He looked left and right with Xiaobao in his arms, then moved a few times, and rushed to the door with Xiaobao in his arms, away from Sukingyu. Sukingyu was so anxious that she was about to rush over, but another man stopped her. The man named Brother Lang tilted his head and looked at Sukingyu with a puzzled expression. Can you do tricks? Ah. Can she do tricks? Ah, are you a Taoist nun? The other man also came to his senses and looked around Sukingyu. While looking at it, he said, why can you and your son be separated now? At that time, we wanted to throw your son away. He was still a burden to carry with us. But we couldn't separate you. It seems that you are connected by something. But we can't see, why are you separated now? Do you know any magic? Sukingyu knew this. She was afraid that she would be separated from Xiaobao, so she put a safety leash around her and Xiaobao's hands so that others could not see what came out of the system. So this group of people wanted to throw away Xiaobao at that time, but found that they couldn't be separated, so Xiaobao was able to stay with her. Sukingyu was extremely happy. Give the child back to me. Sukingyu took advantage of the two people's daze to rush up and snatch Xiaobao over, holding him tightly in her arms. When Xiaobao reached Sukingyu's arms, he waved his fist fiercely at the wolf brother. Bad guy. This kid. He's very courageous. Let's go. Our boss wants to see you. Brother Lang said and walked out first. Before Sukingyu could make a move, she was pushed by another man and pushed her mother and son out of the woodshed. Following the two people walking out, Sukingyu looked around and found that she was still in a mountain this time. But unlike last time at the bottom of the valley, this time there were rolling green hills, like mountains and seas, with no end in sight. In front of us are mountains and plains, lush and thick green. Along the way, various houses were built from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain, including houses made of earthen wood and bricks, houses made of yellow mud and thatch, and houses with bamboo and wood stilts. They were built around the mountain in a well-proportioned manner. This is a village. It was different from the village in the valley where she originally stayed. The valley is flat, and villages are concentrated on the flat land at the bottom of the valley. If it were not surrounded by mountains, one would think it was an ordinary village outside. But now here, there are one house in the east and one in the west, built along the mountain. This mountain road is also winding, narrow and steep, and is paved with various materials, including bluestone slabs, gravel, and large pieces of wood. There is even nothing at all, just a shallow pit dug along the mountain to step into. Hurry up and go, what are you looking at? Our eldest brother is waiting for you. How much do you want to show off and you still want our eldest brother to wait? The man walking behind gave Sukingyu a hard push, causing her to stagger. This mountain road was already difficult to walk, and since she was holding a child and looking around, she almost fell down. Sukingyu felt angry, but she had no choice but to suppress it. I didn't dare to look at it anymore, so I just climbed the mountain road silently. After climbing for quite a while, we finally reached a flat platform halfway up the mountain. There is a row of relatively well-built brick houses here. There is a large piece of flat land in front of the house, which is obviously much better than the houses seen along the way. Sukingyu was out of breath after climbing the mountain road for a while, so she quickly put Xiaobao on the ground and wanted to rest for a while. Seeing Xiaobao looking up at her, she smiled at Xiaobao, touched his face, and comforted him. Before she could catch her breath, the man behind her urged her inside. Sukingyu had no choice but to lead Xiaobao and follow Brother Lang into the three-bay house in the middle. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 157. A large hall, with armchairs on both sides, a desk at the top, and a high-backed chair on each side. A burly, middle-aged man with a beard was resting his head with his fist on his forehead and his eyes closed. A beautiful woman was standing behind him, pressing his forehead. Brother, people have brought it? The man above opened his eyes and looked towards Sukingyu, sizing up her mother and son. Seeing that the kid dared to look at him, he was a little surprised. He deliberately looked fierce and stared at him with wide eyes. Unexpectedly, Xiaobao also stared at him with a puffy face. It made the man laugh, and the woman behind him also covered her mouth and laughed. This kid is so interesting, the woman said as she walked out from behind him and took a few steps towards her mother and son. Is it interesting? How about I leave it to you to play for a few days, said the bearded man. That's great. My child, how old are you? The woman smiled and walked towards Sukingyu and her son. Sukingyu's heart tightened, she grabbed Xiaobao, pulled him to her legs, and held him tightly. When the woman saw this, she paused and looked at Sukingyu. This is your son. He doesn't look like you. He's my son. He looks just like his father. She looks like dad. What about his dad? Is it okay to not want such a beautiful woman, but also such a cute son? The woman looked back and forth at Sukingyu and her son. His father was drafted and left. Have you been drafted? That doesn't matter. Men, we have a lot of them here, said the bearded man above. The woman suddenly turned to look at him. The bearded man paused, then smiled nonchalantly and said, "There are a lot of unmarried men in our village, you can pick whatever you want. Even if you want to pick a married man, it doesn't matter. Which man thinks there are too many women?" Brother Lang and the other man laughed and agreed, "Who is so blind and thinks there are too many women? I don't think so." As they spoke, the two of them looked at Sukinyu wantonly. Sukinjeo felt goosebumps all over her body. "No, I understand the village master's kindness. I have a man, and the baby has a father." Brother Lang smiled and said, "Do you think you can get out after entering our village? Or do you plan to wait for your man who went to the battlefield to save you?" The man next to him also laughed. "Our village is surrounded by mountains. The mountains are forested and dense, and there are many wild animals and poisonous snakes. It is easy to defend but difficult to attack. From the outside, you can't tell that there are people living inside. The road, even if you can't find it, do you still want someone to save you?" Sukinyu pursed her lips and said nothing. The woman gave her a meaningful look, smiled at the men and said, "Don't scare this little lady away. We finally brought her in. We carried her all the way. It's not hard for our brothers." After speaking, he knelt down and teased Xiaobao, "What's your name and how old are you? Your eyes are so big, black and bright." He smiled softly at Xiaobao. Xiaobao didn't know whether he thought she meant no harm or thought her smile was pretty, so he grinned at her and called her auntie, which made her very happy. He immediately picked up Xiaobao and said, "I like this child." Sukinyu was anxious, fearing that she would take Xiaobao away, so she stared closely and moved on her heels. The bearded man watched the woman teasing Xiaobao, and it took him a while to remember his purpose. "Why couldn't we separate you mother and son in the first place?" Sukinyu was stunned and started to make up. Back then, there was an eminent monk who said that mother and son were destined to have a disaster. He said that once mother and son were separated, they would be separated for life and death. So he gave me a talisman, saying that it would prevent us from being separated. "Where's the talisman?" Luohu was very interested. "When I woke up, I only felt a pain in my chest, and when I looked at the talisman, it turned into a handful of black ashes," Sukinyu said with a look of regret, as if it had happened. The bearded man saw such a good thing in the world and was thinking about snatching it away. Unexpectedly, it was burned to ashes. With an annoyed look on his face, "Why did it start to burn?" Sukinyu shook her head, "I don't know. He probably blocked the disaster for our mother and son and dispersed." The bearded man had a look of pity on his face. "That should be it." "It's a pity. Can we still find this eminent monk?" the woman asked. There were such talismans that could ward off disasters, and she wanted to ask for a few. Who wouldn't want a talisman like this? Several people in the hall looked at Sukinyu with burning eyes. Sukinyu calmed down and continued to make up, "I guess I can't find him. The eminent monk traveled around and didn't stay in one place to preach. I was also destined to meet him." Seeing the unwilling looks of those people, he thought for a while and said, "But I remember the appearance of that eminent monk very clearly. If I meet him again in the future, I will definitely be able to recognize him. Then I will help the village leader and everyone. Please get some protective talismans. That's all it can do." After Lu Shihu finished speaking, he looked at Sukinyu again, looked at the woman again, and waved them out. As for women, he has many, and he doesn't necessarily want the woman in front of him. She looks okay, but it's not good to make Wu Niang angry because of her. He finally abducted Wu Niang and was doting on her so as not to do anything that would make her unhappy. Bearded asked Sukinyu to leave, but the girl named Wu Niang refused to let her go. "Take Xiaobao outside to play with him in an open space." Seeing that she had no ill intentions, Sukingnao let her go. While staring at Xiaobao, he asked her for information. "That woman is very smart. As the eldest brother, she naturally knows what to say and what not to say. After chatting for a while, Sukingnao only knew that this village was called Black Tiger Village, and they had only been here for a few days. The man just now became the new village leader. Some people called him the village leader, and some still called him the general. And the woman teasing Xiaobao is called Wu Niang, and she is the woman of the village owner. The two men who brought her here just now were named Grey Wolf and Black Bear. Sukingnao looked at the rolling green hills all around, and felt a sense of powerlessness. After a while, the girl got tired of playing with Xiaobao. She covered her delicate little mouth and said she was sleepy and wanted to go to bed, so she and Xiaobao were sent away. The black bear came over and took her mother and son away. He took them to a mountain stream at the foot of the mountain, and had people bring her a lot of clothes, including 3 large basins. Let her wash her clothes on the blue stone. If she doesn't finish washing, she won't have dinner. It sounded like mother and son had lunch. If she and Xiaobao hadn't been able to get food from the system, mother and son would have collapsed on the ground. Sukingyu looked at the 3 large basins of clothes on the ground that exuded various smells, and felt extremely resistant. The black bear raised his leg and kicked her. Wash quickly. If you don't finish washing before dark, you won't have dinner. Brothers, if you don't have clothes to wear, just wait to be whipped. It doesn't matter if you don't eat, you have to think about your son and see if he can be hungry. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 158. Sukingyu glanced at Xiaobao and saw him staring at the black bear with a bulging face. It must have been the kick the black bear just kicked her that made Xiaobao angry. Ever since this child was born, he has been very close to Suqing, probably because of the heart-to-heart connection between mother and son. Along the way, he was on the road and on the run, living a hard life with her, and Xiaobao became closer and closer to her. As soon as I wake up and can't see her, I have to look for her. She gets a little emotional when she sees someone treating her badly. Sukingyu didn't want Black Bear to see Xiaobao like this, so she quickly pulled Xiaobao behind her. He squatted down on the bluestone board, picked up a piece of clothing from the basin, dipped it in the water, then took it to the bluestone board and beat it with a laundry mallet. Seeing that she was willing to take action, the black bear turned around and left. Not afraid of leaving her here alone. There was only one road leading to the outside of the village, and the brothers guarded it at all levels, so even she, a woman with a child, could not escape. After entering the village, it is difficult to fly even with wings. Very afraid. Sukingyu waited until the back of the black bear could no longer be seen, threw away her clothes, pulled Xiaobao over and comforted him. He looked around and took out a lollipop to reward Xiaobao. Xiaobao immediately started to smile, his eyes narrowed with joy. This made Sukingyu feel a little sad. She really didn't want to stay in this painful ancient time for a moment. Can you abduct Xiaobao back to modern times? He wants to show him cartoons, eat delicious food, and buy him the best clothes. Xiaobao threw himself on Sukingyu's back, holding the lollipop in one hand and sucking it bit by bit, while holding Sukingyu's shoulder in one hand. Sukingnao felt Xiaobao's warm body temperature and felt extremely comforted. While smiling and talking to him, he washed the clothes in his hands. A group of thieves kidnapped their mother and son, and she hadn't gone crazy yet. Was she worthy of being asked to wash their clothes? Can Sukingyu wash them well? That must not be the case. You asked me to wash it, okay, I'll wash it. But you didn't tell me to wash it off. Right. Sukingyu threw 3 large basins of clothes into the water. When they were wet, she lifted them up, took off her shoes, stepped on them and squeezed the water twice. Oh, Mom, don't you just wash them? I put the clothes in 3 large basins through water, screwed them up, stacked them in the basins, and started playing with Xiaobao in the mountain stream. Hey, son, look, there is a fish here. Our little one hasn't seen a fish swimming in the water, right? Let me catch one for you. After Sukingyu said that, she rolled up her trouser legs and got out. The water is not deep either, just up to the kneecaps. She stood on tiptoe, trying not to create too many water ripples, and clasped her hands to one side where the water plants were thick, and quickly touched it. Hey, I caught it. Look, son, it's a little crucian carp. Sukingyu pinched the fish from above the gills, stabilized the fish's body, and showed it to Xiaobao. Xiaobao was so happy that he clapped his hands and smiled so happily that he stretched out his little hands and wanted it too. Seeing how courageous he was, Sukingyu grabbed his little hand and taught him to pinch the fish from its back, but as soon as she let go, the fish swung its tail and fell out of Xiaobao's hand. Break away. Xiaobao shook a few drops of water and asked him to tilt his head and squint his eyes. When he saw the fish falling on the bluestone board, he became anxious. He squatted down and pounced on it with his 2 little hands. The fish jumped up and several it tumbled into the water. After a few more times he disappeared. Ah, ah. Xiaobao stared at the water and pointed with his little finger, shouting, then looked up at Sukingyu. Sukingyu laughed, learn from my mother, fish, fish. The fish is gone. Fish, see you. Yes, the fish is gone. Fish. He said fish in his mouth, and turned his little hands up and down towards her, saying that the fish was gone. Why is it missing? The confused look on his face made Sukingyu fall in love with him. What a sweet boy. Sukingyu held his little face and said, my dear son, can I catch another one for you? After saying that, she asked him to stand on the bluestone board and got into the water again. This heartwarming scene of mother and son playing in the water made the 2 people who were secretly hiding and observing not far away laugh. Grandpa, are there good people among the thieves? Her son who loves her so much shouldn't be a bad person, right? The girl said to the old man beside her. This mother and son should not be from those thieves. I'm afraid they were caught by those people. Ah! Were they captured? Then she is even more pitiful than us. That child is so cute, and he looks so smart. His mother can see that she loves him very much, but were they captured? Then they are embarrassed. Come on, don't you go crazy at home. Yes, the family must be crazy. Damn those thieves, they don't do anything to human affairs. The old man gritted his teeth with hatred when he talked about that group of thieves. Staring at the mother and son at the mountain stream, seeing the young mother gentle and attentive, and the son smart and cute, I felt sorry for them. This group of thieves are really damn indifferent. The mother and son were captured and imprisoned in this mountain, and they didn't know where to find them at home. Grandfather. Shiuer, come on, listen to Grandpa. The 2 hid in the dense forest, and the old man gave his granddaughter instructions. Sukingyu didn't see the scene in the dense forest. The black bear didn't tell her where to send her washed clothes. The mountain road was so high and steep. Do you want her to carry it up? I'm afraid it's not just daydreaming about beautiful things. Sukingyu ignored it. Just stay here in the mountain stream. It was dark, and if the black bear didn't come looking for her, she would take Xiaobao to a house with lights. As for the clothes, just throw them away. So she was not in a hurry and just took Xiaobao to play by the water with peace of mind. Mother and son have been on the run these days, and it is a rare opportunity to have a relaxing time with Xiaobao. Naturally, Sukingyu would not let go of this family time. Seeing that Xiaobao was so courageous and eager to jump into the water, he stripped him naked and threw him into the water. Neither mother nor son had been able to take a good bath these days. If it hadn't been for broad daylight, she would have wanted to jump into the water and take a quick wash. Xiaobao seemed to like the water very much. Even though the water was up to his chin, he still laughed happily. He also stood up on tiptoes without any instruction and plopped his whole body into the water. His little body twisted and twisted like a little frog. Sukingyu held his belly so that he could spread his limbs and float on the water. Sometimes when I see him having fun, I quietly let go of him, and when he is about to sink, I pick him up with my hands. Mother and son had a great time. Sukingyu supported him all the way and walked slowly in the direction of the water. Xiaobao was not tired, his limbs were splashing happily, and he splashed in the water excitedly. The mother and son walked all the way to a place with clear and shallow water. Sukingyu let Xiaobao play alone, and she began to look at the creek. Where will this water flow? I wonder if I can escape from this village by following this stream. What is outside this village? If it is also occupied by evil people, if you escape from this tiger's den, you may end up in another wolf's den. There are probably many venomous snakes and beasts in this vast mountain. No messing around. Plan well. When Sukingyu was looking at the stream and the surrounding mountains, her grandfather and grandson in the dense forest were also staring at her closely. "Grandpa, what is she looking at?" The old man smiled. "This woman is very smart. She might want to escape along this stream." "Huh? She can't get out. We don't even know where the water in this stream goes. If there's an idea, there's a way out." "Grandfather, you do as Grandpa said." "Madam, she has a tender heart." Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 159. The sky got dark early in the mountains, and soon a touch of yellow rose on the horizon. A few faint rays of sunlight shone through the gaps in the clouds, and there were dots of stars. Like the undying hope in Sukingyu's heart. The black bear came over, and when he was still some distance away, he cursed loudly, "You woman, you really know how to enjoy it. I caught you in the right place, right? You mother and son can hide from the war outside here. Enjoy life in peace, right?" Seeing that Suqingying didn't respond and was only arranging her son's clothes, she walked over, looked into the basin, and rummaged through it. Sukingyu thought that he would find the clothes not clean and ask her to wash them again, but she didn't expect that the other party didn't even bother to pick them up and shake them off to look at them. Black Bear saw the clothes twisted and stacked in the basin, but said nothing. He just said, "Are you a lady from a rich family? It takes half an afternoon to wash your clothes. You can't be naked if you have to wait to wear them. You didn't tell me where to send it after washing. Why don't I just wait there?" The black bear choked after hearing this. He tilted his head and recalled it. It seemed that he never said where he would send it after washing. Then he stopped talking. He kicked the tub and said, "Take it and follow me." "What? Take it? How to take it?" "Think of her as having 3 heads and 6 arms." Seeing that she was not moving, the black bear turned to look at her impatiently. Following Sukingyu's gaze and looking at the ground, she patted her forehead and felt a little unconscious. Yan raised his voice and shouted in an unknown direction, "2 people are coming." Sukingyu raised her head and looked around, and saw 2 young men quickly emerging from a mud house not far away. "Move back." "Okay, brother Black Bear," the 2 of them said as they leaned over and moved a pot each. The black bear turned around and left first. Sukingyu looked at the other forgotten pot on the ground and chose to ignore it. The clothes weren't that heavy, but the tub was dead heavy. In this era, composite boards and man-made boards are not used. They are all solid wood boards. How can they be lighter? She couldn't walk on this mountain road well by herself, and she still had to carry Xiaobao. She didn't want to move such a big pot. "You can just move back as you moved here. We already called 2 people, so what's the problem in calling 1 more person?" Holding Xiaobao in his arms, he followed slowly. After walking for a long time, The black bear looked back and saw that she was following closely behind him, and was about to turn around and go back. Suddenly he turned back to look at her. "You didn't move that basin of clothes, what about the other basin?" "Still there." Sukingyu looked innocent. You woman." Black Bear was so angry that he ran from the mountain road to Sukingyu in a few steps and raised his hand to hit her. Sukingyu held Xiaobao in her arms and looked at him calmly. "After thinking about it, I still have to take care of other people's territory first." Gritting his teeth, he said, "Does General Black Bear think that as a woman, walking on this kind of mountain road is just like walking on flat ground, or does he think that if I hold a child, my legs will not be tired when I walk and I will not be out of breath? Can I hold another pot, clothing?" Then he put Xiaobao on the ground. "My leg is about to break. I can't survive it. I'll just stay here. I can't walk anymore." Seeing her showing weakness, Black Bear gritted his teeth and said, "Why didn't you say anything just now? You've gone all this way before saying so. I thought you knew." Sukingyu looked at him weakly. The black bear glared at her angrily, but had no choice but to raise his leg and kicked a man next to him. "Why don't you go down and move?" Oh. The man responded and ran down the mountain. Black Bear glanced at Sukingyu and said angrily, "Follow me." Sukingyu looked at his back indifferently, picked up Xiaobao again, and followed him. Xiaobao looked at her with a stern face, a little unhappy. Sukingyu smiled reassuringly at Xiaobao. "Xiaobao is lying on my mother's shoulder. My mother can't see the road with you like this." Upon hearing this, Xiaobao softened his body and lay on Sukingyu's shoulders, holding Sukingyu's neck tightly with both hands, pouting, looking at the winding mountain road in front of him. The black bear took Sukingyu to a flat area halfway up the mountain and asked her to dry her clothes. "From now on, you will come here at dawn every day to collect your clothes, move them to the mountain stream to wash them, dry them in the sun after washing, and then help cook. In the afternoon, you will help with the work in the village. There is a lot of work, don't think about it. Lazy. Your son is just a freeloader. If you don't do more, what will he eat?" Sukingyu didn't say anything. She just picked up the clothes and hung them to dry. Xiaobao followed her step by step, glancing at the black bear from time to time. After another man brought up 2 large basins of clothes, Sukingyu dried them, and then the black bear took her to a kitchen and asked her to help cook. Sukingyu didn't know how many people there were in the village, but several earthen houses were turned into kitchens, and 7 or 8 stoves were all burning. There are many women busy in the kitchen, some are nimble and some are clumsy and mechanical. No woman spoke. "I don't know if it's because there is a man watching at the door. What are you looking at? Why don't you go in and help?" Black Bear felt that this woman Sukingyu was a little different, unlike the other women he had captured. She actually talked back to him, without crying to him or demanding life or death. This woman needs to be watched closely. Sukingyu was pushed in by the black bear. She looked around and saw that the kitchen was small and there were several women there, making it difficult to move around. The stove was not designed properly and the smoke exhaust was not good at all. The kitchen was dark and filled with lingering smoke. Sukingyu saw Xiaobao holding her thigh and rubbing his eyes with his little hands, so she said, "I'll do other work." The black bear glanced at her and, not knowing what he was thinking, actually agreed. He took her to a pile of firewood outside the kitchen. "Then you chop the firewood. Chop it smaller, otherwise it won't burn well. Look at the smoke in the stove." Sukingyu looked at the messy pile of firewood in front of her, the large pieces of wood, and knew that the black bear might want to punish her. But it was better than staying in the kitchen filled with smoke and oil. So she nodded in agreement. She picked up the axe on the ground, looked around, and couldn't find a bench, so she dragged a slightly longer wooden stake over, swept it, let Xiaobao sit on it first, and then she sat on it, and started to work on the firewood. One axe chopped it. The gap on the wood was pitifully small. Her hands were still numb from the vibration. I'm afraid the axe hasn't been sharpened yet. The black bear was relieved when he saw that she couldn't chop it. You have to move faster, several kitchens are waiting for use. If there is no firewood, and our general is delayed from eating, we don't know whether we will suffer or not, but you will definitely suffer. When the time comes, I will throw your son into the mountains. Don't cry. Sukingmei frowned. She simply stood up, half-stanced, raised the axe and chopped it down fiercely. Damn bear, I will chop you to death. You threaten me with my son. You let me chop wood and let me cook, right? I will give you a bowl of medicine when the time comes, and the medicine will knock you out. Sukingmei regretted it. She should have had a good relationship with Miao Posi and tricked her into carrying some common medicines for traveling around the world. Seeing that she was chopping wood obediently, the black bear stopped staring at her, went into the kitchen and took out a big piece of meat, and stuffed it into his mouth while walking with his neck tilted, and left. Sukingmei gritted her teeth at his back. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 160. Several kitchens were waiting for firewood. Sukingyu was being stared at by a man, so she couldn't be lazy. She kept chopping until her hands were so tired that she couldn't even lift the axe, and her palms were blistered. It is done. X.com. Several men came, put the food in wooden barrels, and carried it away. The leftover food in the kitchen belongs to these women. There were a few men who had eaten first and were picking their teeth at a place not too far away and staring at them. Sukingyu couldn't lift her hands and had no appetite. But he didn't want to be too special, so he squeezed over and served food to her and Xiaobao. Don't think about meat, just a bowl of brown rice and a bowl of vegetables. Sukingyu held her hands in her hands and was about to walk out. A young woman stopped her, took out a few pieces of eggs from somewhere, and poured them on her dish. Sukingmei looked at the pieces of eggs on top of the dish in surprise, then looked at the young woman. You don't seem to recognize this, right? Why did you give her the hidden eggs? Your son is very cute. I'm afraid he won't be able to eat this meal. The woman smiled at her. Sukingyu glanced at the food in her hand, raised her head and thanked her gratefully. She wanted to say something more, but saw that she had turned around and avoided it. Sukingyu looked around and saw that no one was paying attention, so she went out with the bowl. I muttered in my heart, so, did Xiaobao use his cute little face to earn eggs for himself? Sukingmei walked to the wooden pile in front of the firewood pile with the rice in her hand and sat down. Xiaobao, come here, let's eat. Xiaobao is good at everything, he has a good physical foundation, he doesn't cry easily if he doesn't make a fuss, that's right, he is very picky about his food. The little temper became stubborn, and Sukingyu had nothing to do with him. Neither his father nor his mother were noble people, and his father was even more poorly raised. How did this child have such a noble stomach? Genetic variation in this place? Xiaobao, there are eggs. Come, mom will feed you. Lu Xiaobao sat obediently on the wooden post, with his hands on his legs, upright, his face slightly raised towards Sukingyu, his little mouth open. Sukingyu really loved the way he looked like a baby bird waiting to be fed. Sometimes I want to teach him a lesson about his picky eating habits. But, look at his cute little appearance, just, whatever, be picky about food. Now the system can still redeem things for him, so she just needs to save money. The egg suited Xiaobao's appetite very well and made him smile happily. He even took 2 bites of the brown rice and several bites of the dark vegetables. Sukingyu was very pleased. Not eating anything, but still jumping around, I'm afraid it's not just the talisman that can explain it. Not far away, the young woman who had just given Sukingyu the eggs was watching Sukingyu and her son from a distance while eating. Seeing that the child was still grinning after eating the eggs, She held the corners of her lips happily. I couldn't help but think that I would hide some delicious food for the child tomorrow. I didn't hide any meat today, but I must hide 2 pieces tomorrow. After dinner, it was dark. You can't force people to light lamps and work. Lighting oil is expensive, and candles are even more expensive. Black Bear then took Sukingyu and her son to a larger mud house, and gave her a few words not to fall asleep early tomorrow morning, but to remember to get up and work before leaving. Sukingyu took Lu Xiaobao and walked in. I saw 2 oil lamps lit in 2 corners of the room. They were flickering on and off. The wicks were thin and the light was even weaker. A dozen women were sitting or lying on the bunks. Many people were in a daze, and some were curled up with their heads buried in their knees, unable to see their expressions. Some people huddled in corners and sobbed. Sukingyu sighed in her heart. She also wanted to cry. She didn't know where Su's mother and others were or if they were still alive. Sukingnao looked at the main bunk, looking for an empty seat. She felt someone stabbed her behind her, and when she looked back, she saw that it was the young woman who gave her eggs in the kitchen. I have a wooden basin here, and this veil is new. Do you want to wash it? Yes. Thank you. Sukingyu wanted to take it. The woman avoided it and said, I'll take it. It's inconvenient for you to carry the child. Sukingyu glanced at her, then looked down at Xiaobao, and couldn't help but wonder, son, are you so popular? Xiaobao didn't know why and blinked at her. Sukingyu took Xiaobao and followed the young woman out. When they arrived at a wooden house, the young woman lit a lamp, put down the wooden basin, and said, you go in and wash. There is mountain spring water behind this wooden house. How about you give your son to me to take care of you, and you go in and wash first? Sukingyu quickly shook her head, no, I'll just take the child in and wash it together. Thank you. The young woman smiled nonchalantly, you're welcome. I like your son very much. He looks so lovable. Sukingyu squeezed Xiaobao's hand and smiled. He walked in with Xiaobao. I'll help you relax. You can wash in peace. Sukingyu paused and said outside, okay. Thank you. Is this woman being too kind to her mother and son? What's the origin? Sukingyu was thinking while washing. Then I heard the woman say outside, I saw you in the afternoon. You wash your clothes in the stream at the foot of the mountain. So she fooled around with those clothes and she saw it? My grandfather and I were in the woods halfway up the mountain at that time. I thought you were with those people. Because the women who were captured were all young and unmarried, and you were the only one with a child. But Grandpa told me that you might have been caught by those people. So this woman? What status? Grandfather and grandson were both arrested together? Both you and your grandfather were arrested by them. No, we are originally from this village. Sukingyu quickly washed Xiaobao, cleaned herself up, and left the house. Ask her, are you from this village? Yes, those thieves came just a few days ago. Many of them came and occupied our village. What about the people in your village? They don't have any fighting power at all. It's too miserable. Don't they all die? We are still in the village. But the village owner has changed, and we all have to work for them. If we don't work, we will have no food. They guard us more strictly than you. Just stay alive. Sukingyu was thinking about what she said. He looked her over and said, why are you telling me this? The woman was a little embarrassed, my grandpa, maybe I want you to help me with something. Let me help? How can I help? Sukingyu was a little surprised. The young woman hesitated for a moment, then pursed her lips and said nothing. He just said, we are not bad people. You can trust us. My name is Xiu'er, and my grandfather was the original owner of this village. Sukingyu looked at her steadily. Well, her features were pretty and she didn't look like she was lying. She shouldn't have any evil intentions, right? Just what do you want her to do? Why did you choose her again? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Madam, she has a tender heart. Author, Bhaya 11U. Chapter 161. Sukingnao saw that Jiu'er didn't say anything and didn't ask any further questions. After reading, she also wanted to observe and observe for a few more days, and no bad person would say that he was a bad person. The two went back to Datongpuo. Before reaching the door, I saw several men dragging a woman out from a distance. Several women cried, howled, and begged for mercy, but the men chose to ignore them and dragged them all the way out. The women slapped and hit them, but to no avail. They were not stronger than the men. There was a woman who was holding onto the door frame and refused to leave, but was soon dragged to the ground and dragged along by the man. Jiu'er was so frightened that she hid behind Sukingyu. Sukingyu was stunned by the scene in front of her. When she came to her senses, her feet unconsciously went that way. Don't go, Jiu'er grabbed her tightly. Sukingyu was hugged tightly by Jiu'er. She stared blankly as the men dragged, hugged, or carried the women away. Sukingnao couldn't explain what she felt in her heart. Where have they gone? Can you save them? It's useless, it's useless. There are many of them and they have weapons in their hands. We can't defeat them. They are just going to die, Jiu'er cried softly. Many people have already died in the village, no more people can die. A woman's cry gradually came from the whole room, and then she cried louder and louder. A feeling of powerlessness came to Sukingyu's heart. Aren't you from the stockade? You should be familiar with the stockade. Let's set a fire for them, and then we can escape. Jiu'er shook her head desperately. It's useless, it's useless. You can't escape. There is only one way out of the mountain. They are guarding it at all levels, with bows and arrows, swords and spears in their hands. We can't defeat them. There are so many of you, why are you giving up the entire village? All the women are giving up. Just watch. Go up and fight with them, Sukingyu yelled at her. Venting inexplicable emotions. Didn't we? We fought with them, but we couldn't. So many people died in the village. Many people died. If they continue to die, the village will be wiped out. There must be a few roots left. We were separated, and there were still people watching us. Those beasts drag women to express their beastly desires every day, some from outside, and some from the village. Both Guo'er and Hwa'er died, and they hanged themselves the next day. Guo'er's father was killed by them on the first day, and Guo'er's mother also hanged herself on the day Guo'er died. Guo'er's brother went to find them to fight for his life, but was stabbed and is still lying on the bed. Grandpa said no more people could die, they had to live. Nothing is more important than living. Only by staying alive can we drive out these thieves and recapture the village. Jiu'er cried desperately. Sukingyu felt as if a huge stone was blocking her heart, making it difficult for her to breathe. She felt that she should do something, so she just watched helplessly. She couldn't get over her own hurdle. Is there anyone in your village who knows medicine? Let's put a handful in it when we cook tomorrow, pour the medicine on them, and then kill them all. Jiu'er cried and shook her head. It's useless. They are very cautious. They always let us eat before eating, and then put it out. These thieves. Sukingyu gritted her teeth. She wanted to think about it, carefully. There must be a way. After the woman's crying in the room subsided, Sukingyu walked in with Xiaobao and Jiu'er in her arms. At night, Sukingyu put the safety leash on her and Xiaobao again. It's so unsafe. This scene tonight shattered her imagination. She didn't know if someone would come and drag the mother and son out at night. She couldn't leave Xiaobao behind. Sukingyu tossed and turned and didn't fall asleep, thinking of any way to kill or drive these thieves out. In the middle of the night, the captured women came back. Sukingnao lay on the bed and did not dare to move. She couldn't let them know that anyone was awake, she was afraid of startling them. After a while, Sukingyu heard suppressed cries, which were very low at first, suppressed, and in extreme pain. She was covered with a quilt. Then the sound got louder. Sukingyu hugged Xiaobao tightly, her eyes moist and hot. She understands this feeling of powerlessness. After a while, someone opened the door and went out. Sukingyu listened quietly, not feeling sleepy at all. After a while, someone opened the door and went out again. Sukingyu still didn't dare to move. She was afraid of scaring them. I wonder if they went to wash up. Sukingyu was thinking blankly, wondering what she could do. She couldn't be so worried every day. She can deal with 1 or 2 people, and she can also make a sneak attack and make a trick. But what if there are a bunch of people? What should I do with Xiaobao? Can she take care of him? After thinking a lot, I finally fell asleep. She even forgot whether the 2 people who went out came back. The next day, she was awakened by a loud noise. Sitting up in a daze, she ran over to her and whispered the reason into her ear. It was said that this morning someone found 2 women dead at the foot of the mountain. They were beyond recognition, their bodies were cold, and the blood on the ground was dried. Sukingyu was stunned. His body was shaking uncontrollably. She looked around Datongpu blankly and silently counted the number of people. Sure enough, there were 2 people missing. When I turned around, I saw that everyone's eyes were dull, their faces looked haggard, and their faces seemed not to be surprised at all. Sukingyu's heart sank little by little. She should have held them back last night. She heard them going out, she clearly heard it. Why didn't she get up and take a look? She thought they were going to wash up. Afraid of scaring them or hurting their self-esteem, she lay still. She actually watched them go out without helping them. Sukingyu felt very regretful and annoyed. She collapsed on the ground and her tears fell uncontrollably. Xiu'er was also in tears and came to pull her. It is said that they climbed to a very high place and then jumped down from it. Everyone in Datongpu was silent at first, and then they heard crying. First she cried softly and suppressedly, and then she burst into tears. Sad, desperate, and a little hysterical. "Mom, don't cry." Xiaobao came up and hugged her. Sukingyu hugged him tightly and cried for a long time. After a while, several men came and yelled at them, telling them to go out and work and not to be lazy. "We, the leader of the village, are hungry and won't be able to forgive our hatred even if we kill you. What's the point of crying if 1 or 2 people die? A group of women who have never seen the world. We should let you go to the battlefield and let you see how many people die every day. When a person dies, you can even chew a piece of meat from the corpse." Many women immediately vomited when they thought of that scene. Sukingyu glared at the person who spoke hatefully. Soon she was pushed out and took the clothes to wash. Xiu were partners with her. The 2 of them took Xiaobao to the stream in silence. "Madam, she has a tender heart." Author, Bhjiaoye 11U. Chapter 162. Sukingnao was not interested in washing clothes or anything else. She sat on the bluestone slab and stared blankly at the surrounding mountains. Read. It was still early, the fog was thick, and the green mountains not far away were looming. In the past, Sukinggnao would run into the mountains after work. The air in the mountains is fresh, the scenery is charming, and most relaxing. But now she just wants to escape. There is only one way out of the mountain, so what about climbing over it? What's on the other side of the mountain? "Xiu'er, are you the only village in this mountain?" "No, my grandpa said that there are many villages in this mountain." It's just that everyone lives far away from each other. The mountain is high, and they don't usually come to visit. Then after climbing over this mountain, what is behind it? Is there a stockade? This is the only way out of the mountain, so what if we climb over from the other side? What Sukingneo was thinking was, since there was only one road out of the village from this village and it was guarded by bandits, could she climb over from the other side of the mountain to another village and borrow the road from other villages to get out of the mountain? Woolen cloth? I just don't know if other villages have also been taken over by bandits. I have no idea. Xiu'er shook her head. She has never been out of the mountains a few times. When the men went out to hunt, their women never followed them. She didn't know whether there was another way or what was on the other side of the mountain. Sukingyu looked around, then approached Xiu'er and whispered, "Didn't you say that your grandpa wants my help? What help does he want from me?" Xiu'er also looked around, moving her hands constantly, and whispered, "My grandpa wants you to help deliver the letter." Originally, her grandfather wanted her to get close to Sukingyu to see if Sukingyu was trustworthy, and then asked her to take the letter out and find someone to rescue them. Does your grandpa know of another way? There is only one way out of the mountain. It was carved out of the mountain by generations of ancestors with a shovel and a hoe. There is no second way. However, my grandfather often goes into the mountain for hunting and knows the general distribution direction of other villages. He wants you to go to other villages to borrow people. Borrow people from other villages? Sukinjeo was non-committal. Although at this time, everyone is resting, our village has suffered a disaster, and it may be your village's turn next. We must jointly defend against the enemy and fight together. But, if things don't come to an end, why would people come here to die? There is no greater benefit to give to the other party. All of flesh and blood. All cooperation is based on interests, and cooperation is possible only when it is in the best interest of both parties. Does the village have any benefits in exchange now? Sukingyu thought silently. Apart from the village, what channels could she use and what benefits could she exchange for? After thinking for a long time, I found that it was not the case. She has nothing. Neither does this village. A group of old and weak people, the few remaining strong men are still being guarded tightly. Sukinjeo was a little troubled. She found that her limited knowledge and skills were of no use now. Are you just waiting to be slaughtered? No. That can't be done. It's not her style to let others take advantage of her. But she couldn't think of a way for a while. I was so anxious that I scratched my heart and liver. Seeing that another dark night was coming, she didn't know what else was waiting for her. She was frightened. I don't want to have an experience like last night again. Can you take me to see your grandpa? Not now. My grandfather should be suppressed by those thieves right now, taking the men in the village to hunt to get meat for the thieves. Then there are many of you. If there are many people, just kill them on the mountain. They will not notice it. It will cause an accident and they will fall down the mountain. Kill them one by one, Sukingyu said a little fiercely. Xiu'er turned her head and glanced at her leisurely. Sukingyu touched her nose and felt that she was a bit retarded. This damn powerlessness, she was going crazy. I will take you to see my grandpa in the evening. Suqing agreed. The three cobblers are like Zhujiang, maybe let them come up with a solution? My grandfather feels sorry for the people who stayed behind. If they find out, more of us will die. I have two good friends, Guo'er and Hua'er, they died the next day. Guo'er's mother, he was also hanged that day. Guo'er's brother went to kill them with a knife, but was stabbed. Now he can't get out of bed. Hua'er's fiancée went to fight with them, but was thrown off the mountain. Sukingyu was silent. There are many people who have died in their families. Grandpa said that although the living are suffering, they still have to live. Otherwise, who will remember the dead? Sukingyu tilted her head upward. She wanted to cry again. What was going on? Blinking away her tears, she saw Xiu'er speaking with a sad and desperate look on her face, while she was washing the clothes with utmost sincerity in her hands. He pulled me over and said, "Learn." I threw it into the water twice, took off my shoes, squeezed the water with my feet twice, and it was ready. Xiu'er looked at her blankly, and silently took the clothes over again. If they can't be washed clean, they will ask to wash them again, and they will torture us in different ways. Well, Sukinjao wanted to help Xiu'er reduce some of her burden, but she really couldn't do it. A group of thieves, why should I wash their clothes? Don't wash it. Sukingyu sat on the bluestone board, put on her shoe silently, and began to ask Xiu'er about the situation. Don't you have many women in the village? There are only about 10 people in Datongpu where we live, right? Including the women captured from outside, how many people are there in your village? Xiu'er shook her head while washing. No, there are several large stores. We are also scattered in several places. This, thief. Hateful. Are there any ferocious beasts in this mountain? We don't have tigers or black bears here. But there are leopards, wolves, and pythons. Very big. I saw one when I was a child. Our village worked together to kill one. Everyone in our village ate it for a month, and the meat was still missing. Finished. Sukingyu was so frightened that she trembled. Desperate. She wanted to climb the mountain, but how to avoid this? God wants to destroy her. Do you know how many villages there are in this mountain? I heard my grandfather say that people outside seem to call our place Jiangdong Kishizai. But I don't know if there are Kishizai. Anyway, there are many villages in this mountain. Some are smaller than us, and some have 1 or 2 households. There are some large villages with 100 or 200 households, and there may be larger ones, but I have never been there. Jiangdong 70 village. Sukinjao's spirit was lifted. No matter how small the village is, there are only a few dozen households on average, but there are still 700 households, right? There are only 1 or 2,000 households in a lower county, which is completely equivalent to the size of a lower county. Jiangdong number 70 village, does it have a leader? If someone and some force were to capture Jiangdong number 70 village, Sukingyu felt hot in her heart. Someone might be interested, right? There are treasures in this mountain. But, where are these 70 villages located? This continuous green mountain is so vast that you cannot see the sky, and it is unfathomable. The mountains are high and the forests are dense, and the terrain is complex, making it easy to defend but difficult to attack. That's why there are so many bandits hiding in the mountains. We have to think of a way to destroy this group of bandits. Otherwise she would have no chance of survival.